Hi guys, I thought I'd do a quick video update really because obviously I keep bouncing around numerous messages on the Twitter feed, etc. In case you don't know who I am, because we haven't met personally, which is probably the vast majority of you, I'm Simon. So I am the Full Circle obsessive that has been working for the last 3 years trying to find out as much about this film as possible because I'm obsessed with it, and also obviously trying to get the film released, re-released and restored. Now, the reason that became even a possibility is obviously a number of reasons. Firstly, of course, the fact that the film isn't available. It disappeared after its original release, had a couple of VHS releases, has a couple of bootleg DVD releases that are hideous, has popped up on Netflix at a time, has popped up on Shudder, there's obviously a copy on YouTube after it appeared on Sony TV, which is actually one of the ways I saw it again a few years back. So you know as well as I do that the film just isn't available in the quality it should be. Now, when I started poking around the film, first it was Peter Fetterman that I spoke to, the producer, who then put me in touch with Richard Longcrane, who I've now been working with for the past 2.5 years. Richard is a ridiculously nice guy, very, very modest. Didn't really think much of Full Circle, to be perfectly honest with you. In his words, it was a quote-unquote mediocre film. But when I suddenly pointed out to him that at the time, 250,000 people had watched the edit that was on YouTube, and that's now up to past 300,000, suddenly there was a level of interest in trying to get the film re-released. So that's what I've been working on with him since then. Now, where we suddenly had an opening was the fact that Peter Hannan, who's the cinematographer, who I've also met and spoken to, interviewed, etc., was actually restoring an older film of his, not Full Circle, a different film, that the negative was in Technicolor's vault, and he was restoring it for a Blu-ray release. While he was at Technicolor, one of the bods there sort of said, "Oh, by the way, that we've got another film in the vault here that's got your name on it, a film called Full Circle." And so there it is in Technicolor's vault, all the reels, soundtrack, the whole shebang. Now, we were suddenly overjoyed and thought, here we go, we're in business. But the problem then comes forward, is the fact that Technicolor will not hand over the materials until somebody comes forward and says, "I am the owner of this film." Okay, so once we get paperwork to say, "I own this film," then they'll give it to us and away we go. We've got Arrow that want to do a restoration and re-release. We've got the BFI that want to store the negative and possibly do some big screen showings at the South Bank. So everything is in place apart from having the negative. So Richard has handed that responsibility over to me and said, poke around, see what we can find. And we were just going round and round in circles, not really able to get anywhere in terms of who actually owns the film. So I have spent God knows how many hours on phones, on emails, at companies' house, going through records, finding stuff like creditors lists for companies that owned it at one point, dissolved paperwork for companies, because it basically boils down to the bottom line was it was owned by Julian Melzack. Now, Julian Melzack owned Albion Films, which is who owned the film. Julian Melzack was the exec producer on Full Circle who rode into the film's rescue when the Canadian financiers started getting itchy about the funding back in '76 when the film was being made. So Julian Melzack owned it. We've got paperwork saying I was the owner of this film, the sole owner of it. Now, the problem is that Albion Films was dissolved, so liquidated the company in the early to mid 90s. And then not long after that, Julian Melzack passed away. So we've got a situation where Julian Melzack was listed as the owner through a company of his. The company doesn't exist anymore, and he is no longer with us. So I produced this ridiculous pack of documents showing that the rights were not sold before the company was liquidated and before Julian Melzack sadly died. However, Technicolor are dragging their feet, saying Julian Melzack could have passed on the rights before he died, because you don't have to fill in any paperwork to pass on the rights to somebody. Now, if that is the case, I have not got any clue as to how you could prove that nobody did buy it off him if they don't need any paperwork to say they have bought it off him. So we've just been going round and round and round with Technicolor, and I phoned them up and Richard phoned them up. We're having to deal with lawyers in LA, even though the materials are here in London. And it's just ridiculous. They reply and say, oh yes, we're looking into it. Thanks for all this paperwork. We'll give you an answer within a week. A week goes by, we don't hear anything. 2 weeks go by, we don't hear anything, so on, so on. A month later, I go to Richard and say, we haven't heard anything. Richard phones them up again. Oh, we'll get back to you in a week. And the process goes round and round like this. And that's where we are at the moment. I spoke to Richard again this morning. So this is the, 26th of February. And I said, look, we haven't heard from them for a month. The last communication said by the end of the week. And I said, this is just getting ridiculous now. I am getting fed up with this. Which I am. I'm tired, I'm exasperated. I don't know what they want us to do to prove this. Richard's words were, he has quote unquote bloody well had enough. And he is going to phone them again this evening to say, look, get your act in gear. What is stopping you giving us this negative? Because once we do, everything else falls into place. So that's where we're at. Hopefully I'll have some news for you in the near future. Please, this is such a tiring exercise. It is mentally exhausting. And basically what is keeping me going a lot of the time is the people liking stuff on Twitter, people getting in touch with me saying how much they like the film. So please keep liking the stuff. Please keep putting the message out there, because there are so many times during this process, which I said has been pretty much 3 years now I've been working on this, where I've actually just sort of thought to myself, why am I bothering with this? Because this is just going round and round in circles. So the fact that people are following us, retweeting the stuff, coming to me and saying it's one of my favorite films, we're so happy you're trying to do this, that is what keeps me going, guys, to be perfectly honest with you. So any more things you can do like that, I really appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, I've already said to my missus that if this does happen, on my gravestone will be, this is the guy that got Full Circle re-released. Got to have the theme music from Colin Towns playing as I'm being cremated, which is all a bit morbid, I know, but if you're watching this, you're probably a horror fan, so you probably get where I'm coming from. So yeah, that's where we're at. Hopefully give you some more updates soon, but I thought rather than bouncing around with emails, it'd be nice to do a short video explaining the process, explaining what I'm trying to do, explaining where we're at, and giving you a bit of an insight into the effing difficult time I'm having trying to get this through all the hoops that Technicolor are putting up for us. So there you go, guys. Hope that's of interest, and yeah, keep following.